And it's my great pleasure to introduce three leaders in West Michigan, leaders in our West Michigan, our state, our country internationally, to talk about how philanthropy changed our region. Later today, you will have an opportunity to ask your questions, so please be thinking of those. Rich DeVos, David Frey, and Kate Pugh Wolters have a great deal in common. Maybe this tells us something. They were all born in Grand Rapids. They are all generous. They are generous with their creativity, their good ideas, their board service, their time, and their resources. They also all believe in community, and they are all supportive of all types of philanthropy. They all have given through every vehicle you could possibly come up with to describe. And they have all created or been part of a family foundation. Now, a subject close to my heart, I'll also tell you that they all are currently playing a leadership role at Grand Valley State University. But you have their bios in your packets, and I would encourage you to Google all three of them. You're going to find out, some interesting things. Today, I'm going to ask them a few questions, and then I hope you will have some of your own. Starting out, and I would address this to all three of you, or maybe David to you, why Grand Rapids? What was important to you? Why does this magic happen?
Well, I think we, about 20 years ago, I guess I should go back a little further. This city, not unlike other mid-sized cities or even larger metropolitan major cities, has had a lot of leaders at various stages in the city's history. And it seems as if each generation has written a chapter in this ongoing book of the city. And there was a period in time about 20 years ago, following the previous generation, which included Rich DeVos and Jay Van Andel, the founders of Amway, and Dick Gillette, and my father, and Walter Idema, Kate's grandfather, and a lot of people who've all written a chapter. But 20 years ago, there was sort of a vacuum, and so a bunch of us got together and formed a committee and to do what we thought needed to be done for our generation. And we're still working on it. It's a work in progress, but we all share a passion for the city. All of us were born here. We're committed to the city and to its future. And so if we're successful, we hope that we'll be able to convince our children to stay here or come back here and play a role, a meaningful role in their chapter of the book, whatever it might be.
Kate, what do you think?
Well, Grand Rapids is my home, always has been. I can't imagine it not being, except on a day like today when it's cold and rainy. I could imagine it not being. But I think what I like is being able to be a big fish in a little pond. And, when you're in a community like Grand Rapids or West Michigan, you're able to have more influence because it's smaller. And you know everybody. I think I know just about everybody in this room. I feel like you're in my living room. So for me, having the bang for your buck being in Grand Rapids is important to me.
And let me just add, I think another way to say what Kate said, the city is not so large that you can't get your arms around the problems or the challenges, right, or the opportunities. Larger cities, it takes larger efforts to galvanize people around a single goal. And this city is still of the size and scale where you can identify the problems and form a really determined coalition of interest to solve the problem.
Yep.
Now, Rich, I have to ask you, this all started when you and your partner not only created a dynamic business, but bought this hotel across the street. Would you share?
Like the others, I was born in this city and went away during World War II and returned and we started a little business here that turned into a big business called Amway. And then one time we had a meeting in the city. The mayor asked me to go on a committee to help talk about building a new convention center, or at least expanding our little convention center. And so we got involved in going to the committee and talking about that, and that led us to talking about our need for a better hotel. And so I went and called on all the hotel companies I knew, but nobody, so they said, we don't build hotels in small towns like that. We build them at airports nowadays. And that was the pattern at that time. And so my partner and I began to talk about it, and so we decided to buy the old Palin Hotel and fix it up. And it turned into the Amway Grand Plaza. The next time we were doing a project to expand our convention center, we again had a problem with trying to get another hotel built. And so my partner was getting along in years, and he's about my age. He was actually a year older, but it sounded kind of funny. Anyway, he passed away. But before he passed away, I said, Jay, if the city needs another hotel, there's a lot of people looking at it, but they really don't have the money. They don't have the resources, so they always try to hit the city up or find some angle to make it work, you know. And I said, well, ready to build another hotel? And I said, if you don't, then our family will. No, he said, if you're going to do it, I'm going to do it. And so we built this hotel. And it's been good. Not that the hotels are profitable or they make any money. They probably will someday when our next generation sells them or whatever. But in the meantime, it's fun to own a hotel. It's sort of like owning a boat, you know. It gives you a kick, and so that's why you buy a lot of things. But more than that, I would say this city is a giving city. I hope you have a community that is filled with givers. When people say to me, when I move to Grand Rapids, how do I get to know people? Let's go to any one of 100 different banquets that are raising money. And buy a ticket and sit down, start talking to people. And you'll meet a lot of people. Because our hotel's probably got a banquet going on just about every night for some religious group or some community group that's raising money and just having their annual meeting. It's a town, and if we have a history of that, of people who, primarily religious organizations that we know of, say, well, if you want to raise any money, go to Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids has got people who give. And so we started with a little base helping us. In my case, my wife and I, we got married, and she says we're going to tithe. It means we're going to put 10% away, and usually just for giving. And so that became the pattern for our life. We didn't make a lot of money then. I made $100 a week out of our little business, and so we put $10 away. And after a while, we started making some real money. And we kept putting 10% away. And then we kept putting a little more away. And so one day we became rich. I don't know if it's because we put the money aside or what, but a pattern was developed in our life of giving. Not, let's see what we got left in our pocket, let's see what we got left over, but by design we give. It's planned that we're going to give. We don't know where, but we know we're going to give it somewhere. And so that pattern has continued. Our foundation is substantial today, and we get a nice staff of people who take care of it and manage it. We make a few of the decisions, and they make all the rest. Isn't that right, Sue? Anyway, this is a very special community. And you just got to organize the folks.
Well, let me ask you.
Let me just add a little thing to Rich's comment. One of the distinguishing characteristics, which Rich has already mentioned, it is a very philanthropically driven and oriented city. And if you really want to be in the game, you better be a giver. And but we're also blessed with one of the distinguishing characteristics is a city with an unusual amount of wealth, a lot of privately held companies, some public, some private, disproportionate almost to the size of the city or to the region. Most cities or metropolitan other size would not be blessed with such successful businesses and such philanthropically motivated families. So when we go to focus on doing some project, whether it's for Grand Valley State, which has had a huge impact in the state and the region, it makes our job easier because we have the resources, we have the mentality and the generosity to get things done. And we are also, I think, very collegial. We know it needs to get done. We rally to the cause, and we go get it over the goal line.
Thankfully, we've all observed this.
Right.
But my next question is, if you were to go to another community and want to get this going, Kate, why is there such an unusual level of cooperation here, and how do you get it going?
It's not automatic. And we have as generous and cooperative as we all are, we all know that there's some competition. There's not only competition amongst nonprofits, sometimes there's competition amongst givers. And I think that that's okay as long as we all recognize that we all have our niche, and that I might not give to something that Rich or Dave does, or vice versa. But we all know what's going on, and we all say to each other, well, I can't do this, maybe you can. And we know where to go for those kinds of things. But starting in a new community, you got to network. You got to get together with other funders. It's the other thing we have in Grand Rapids. We've got a good community of private and public people that get together on a regular basis, talk about the needs of the community, make sure we're all going in the right direction, and try to sort it out. And if we're not going in the right direction, we try to bring people together to talk about how we might get there. But it's certainly not automatic. It has to be intentional and sometimes a little dirty. But I think that in the end, it pays off if everybody talks to each other.
David, of the many building projects you've supported over the years with the Frey Foundation and personally, which one or two do you believe has had the greatest impact on your goals for Grand Rapids, and why?
Well, I've been involved in several in the last 20 years, and I think they sort of fall into a couple of different categories. But certainly, thanks to Kate's family and Steelcase Corporation and to Rich and his family, I think that the downtown campus, Grand Rapids campus, I should say, for Grand Valley State has had a normal ripple effect. It's been a great catalyst for it. It's still going on. We're going to turn the shovel. Rich and Doug, his son, and I are co-chairing this campaign. We're going to turn the shovel next week to start building a $40 million business school. It's going to be an iconic building, in addition to the campus, which I think is now 15 years old, Tom, something like that. It's changed the scale of the university. It's had a huge impact on the education, and some courses are at Allendale, some are in Grand Rapids, and so I think collectively, those two projects have been very important to me personally. My father was one of the original trustees of the university in the early 1960s, and along with Kate's father and a lot of other people. So that's one very important couple of projects. I think the others, I actually worked with Rich's son Dick and in doing some downtown projects, the additional convention center, which actually resulted in this hotel being built, which Rich has already alluded to, and an arena, which is a $75 million project. We're now in the entertainment business. Rich's partner, Jay and Betty Van Andel, were the lead donors in that project. It's been transformative for much of the southern edge of the city, and been converted old warehouses into urban dwelling units, antique shops, bars, antique, whatever. So I think those are the projects, and we're looking at another one as we speak. And I think they've both been very important to me personally. I think they made a difference. I hope they have, and I'm not quitting.
That's the best news.
I'm not going away, Dottie.
Hey, good, terrific.
Dottie, if I could just, when you sent us the list of questions, I put the emphasis on a different word. Instead of what are the community buildings, I looked at as community building. And all of the buildings that we've been able to build in this community are incredible. You know, on Michigan with all of the health and certainly Grand Valley and everything else. But there's another piece that has to do with the system, whether it's a system of delivery of care or delivery of education or delivery of services that I too am proud of, that we've been involved in. And Rich's son, Doug, and I co-chair the First Steps Commission that is looking at trying to take a look at the whole early childhood system and what's working and what's not working. There's been Coalition to End Homelessness. There's been issues around United Way. And so I think that there's another layer or a different layer of community building as opposed to community buildings.
Right.
Well said.
Well said, I agree.
Well said indeed. Rich, and I address this question to you. Everyone here in this room has a certain power. We have it through our God-given intelligence, our educations, our financial resources, leadership. What are your philosophies about the use of such power in community building?
I think you have to decide where you want to focus your time and attention. We decided we wanted to make Grand Rapids our home, and we wanted to possess it, and that we wanted to change it and make it better. We weren't going to worry about Chicago or New York or whatever, although we do things in all of those places. But this was our home, and this is where we were going to give. There are a lot of people who go and give to Harvard or Yale or whatever their schools are, and that's all fine. But while we participate in a lot of things, we decided we were going to make this a special place. And it all started with being asked to serve on a committee. The mayor at that time was a black mayor and a wonderful mayor, and he wanted to build a convention center, and he wanted to make a difference. He made a huge difference just because of a handful of people he put together on a board to try and get something done. And so we'll be forever grateful to him. He came and he left, and I think he's passed away, but he made a big mark, not by giving $1 million. He gave a big mark by assembling a group of people who he felt had their heart in the town and were willing to do something to try and help. And that changed the way we went. It's everything, in my view, is a process. It's not one big decision you make. You make small decisions that get you there. You know, one day you say, well, I'll go on that board. And the next day you say, well, okay, I'll chair this. Okay, I'll go on the fundraising committee. Okay, I'll give some money. The next thing you know, you're giving a lot of money. But in a town, and I'm thinking mainly of when you're trying to get something moving in your town, you've got to assemble a group of people who don't necessarily have the money, don't necessarily have all the big stuff, but have their heart in the city, and somehow they will find the rest of it. But it's a coalition of people who care. We care about this city. I tell our children that we have taken possession of this town. This is your town, and you're responsible for it. We have been blessed with a reasonable amount of wealth, but nevertheless, I say, you got to take care of this city. We've got a lot in it. We've got a lot invested in it, in hotels and structures and office buildings and all the things we have downtown. Our company is 10 miles out of this town. We're not in Grand Rapids. We live out of town. But nevertheless, Grand Rapids is our town. And I guess you got to decide what your town is. And if you can make a difference in it. And you got to find the people who want to make a difference in it. And you got to do what Kate says. You got to have a little competition, and you get the people who got a little money to go back and forth a little bit and kid each other about doing this or doing that, or you can do a little more than that, you know. And I got a couple of people in this town I know of, they said, we give to what you give to. We watch what you support, and these are people with means, and then we support that. And one of the gentlemen even put it on a board in our hotel. I got on the board of the hotel and of the hospital, and so you began to focus on the hospital. Today we have not only a beautiful hospital, a gorgeous new children's hospital. We are a medical center today. At the one time we were just a little town, but we are an educational center today. We weren't before, but we changed our makeup from just a business and retailing community to an educational community. We got a community college, we got the university, we got all sorts of other schools, Christian schools, Catholic schools. Our city is filled with educational opportunities for our young people. It's a huge medical center today. And it all started step by step. And if you look back at some of it, it kind of started when I went on that board along with some other people, and we began to focus on being able to make some big steps forward. You've got to assemble a group of people who care. And you don't always know who they are. But you start to put your committees together, and that your mayor, and you need the political will of people, of political people who want to make a difference. But we have a lot of fun together. It's David, Kate, and all the rest of us. We're all friends. We all know each other. We don't all socialize necessarily with each other, but we're all friends, and we do things together, and we talk about projects together, and we say, no, I'm not going to do that one. I'm not interested in that. It's okay. I was thinking about atmosphere. We were talking about the weather a little bit ago. We're famous for our weather. You would think it would be a great deterrent to it, because you say, well, you don't have a very good climate where you are, and we have the best climate. Because it's not the weather, it's the attitude of the people that create the climate. And if you walk down the street in Grand Rapids, they say to you, hi. I have people shocked at me. Say, I walked down the street and people spoke to me. Well, that's the climate of Grand Rapids, of friendliness, respect for people. So it's a whole package, in my opinion. And this one of climate and creating a climate, and it isn't done when we opened the new convention center, the DeVos place. We had 2,500 people for our first banquet, and they were the people who helped build the building. We wanted to make sure they were there because they created the climate. When we got opened, a convention was ready to come in, and so they all worked overtime and got it all done so the convention could get in. And people in the convention, I've never seen a town like this where the people who work and unload the trucks. We unloaded 40 trucks today. We never could have done that in another city. We have people who care. And you know why? It's because they are cared about and they are respected for what they do. Mm-hmm. Respect to me is the key that we have to build on. And it's respect for all people at all levels. No matter what they do, that we respect them as a person. There's no big secret, that's just straight stuff. But I think this town has a lot of that.
Indeed, indeed. I happen to know that the parents, Rich, I did not know your parents, but certainly yours, were very philanthropic. So I'll come to you in a minute. But Kate and David, tell us, growing up, what did philanthropy mean around your kitchen table? How did your parents transmit those values? Kate?
Well, I mean, how does anyone transmit values? But they do it by their actions. And so my parents, their parents, had always been giving. We were always taught to give back of what we have in many, many ways. And I have two older brothers, and we all do it differently. And we all have different issues that we care about, and but at least we're involved, and that's something that definitely came from both my parents and my grandparents. And you sit around the table and you talk about things that you're involved in, and you know, my mother was involved in the PTA and Indian Trails Camp, and my dad certainly with Grand Valley, and any number of organizations, the downtown revitalization, and my mother passed away several years ago, but my dad is still incredibly philanthropic and has a foundation down in Florida that helps folks that are in public education. And a brother and I sit on that foundation. It's very interesting to be involved in giving away your parents' money as opposed to your own money or your corporation's money. And we know when to say yes and when to say no. It's obvious. But it's expected that we become involved.
Well, in my case, first of all, you had to listen to 30 minutes of what it was like being on Guam in 1943. And they were great stories, but my father, there were three of us, and my mother was pregnant with a fourth, and sort of a girl and three boys. And my father went off to, he felt obligation to serve during World War II, and so he couldn't go to combat, but he did. They sent him to Guam because we had recaptured Guam, and they were rebuilding the banking system and reestablishing a government, and they were still, with all due respect to our good Japanese friends, they were Japanese still in the caves on Guam, and they were still trying to ferret them out and so on. So anyway, these were wonderful stories, and then after we got through World War II, he came home with 4 children, and he left with 3. We talked about what it is to be a citizen of this city or any city, and it involves leadership, it involves engagement, it involves giving, tithing, it involves participating in United Way or in some organization which you have a strong affinity for and a passion for, where you can make a difference. So get involved, make a difference, exercise some leadership, put yourself at risk a little bit, and make a difference in the city. And maybe it'll take you somewhere else, but don't be in the bleachers all the time. You got to get out of the bleachers, get on the field, get in the game, and make a difference in the city, whatever city it is, whatever size it is. And by the way, give some money as well. And we all have various abilities to give, some larger than others, and that's not the point. The point is do it, and don't worry yourself to death about it. It'll make you feel really good, and you'll be very proud of yourself. And as Kate said, you lead by example, and that's true of a lot of things, but it's for sure true of philanthropy. It's an acquired skill, and you got to learn how to do it. There's a right way and a not right way to do it, and it's hard work. Everybody thinks, oh, this is so much fun. We're going to just get. If you do it right, as we all know, it requires a fair amount of due diligence and a fair amount of focus and a fair amount of good judgment, and it's the right thing to do for all the right reasons, and if you don't do it, shame on you. So I hope my kids are hearing this.
We'll make sure they do.
Right.
Well, Rich, you and Helen have 4 outstanding children and their spouses and now grandchildren who are all following your example, but how did you and Helen transmit all this?
This whole business of giving is a part of our life, and they know that. And at the earliest stages, when we would meet at Christmas time, they would sit around the table with us and throw their names in the hat of things they'd like to give money to, even when they were in grade school and so forth. And so it's a part of how you do things. It's a part of what enriches life. My wife was a great symphony fan. We treat the symphony as if we own it.
That's okay.
Don't we?
I'm on the board.
Yeah, it's okay. But, you take ownership of things in a community when you're a part of the community, when you're appreciated. Showing appreciation is a very important thing. When Grand Valley had one of its first banquets and wondered how to get people there, we decided we would honor somebody at every banquet. That then became the pattern of the whole town. Every community organization had a banquet and they all honored somebody. Wasn't that great? Everybody was getting some form of recognition. And it wasn't because they always gave money, but something that they did here or elsewhere in the world. And so it became a constant recognition and showing appreciation for what people were doing or giving. David, I want to hit one point. The Seidman School of Business is, we have, but the new building is going to be named after Bill Seidman. Now, you're blessed with special people, and you have them in your community, and if you don't know who they are, you ought to dig them out. They may not have been recognized. They may not have been appreciated. They may not have been asked. It's amazing how many people of goodwill are never asked to do anything. They're business people sometimes, they're a little shy sometimes they're afraid somebody's going to ask them for money. You got to teach them how to handle that, see. But the Seidman School of Business is a tribute to Bill Seidman, who happened to grow up here and became, as you know, chairman of the you don't know, he's chairman of the FDIC, ran Seidman and a big international CPA group, and he was just a guy who had great ideas and did things. He was our accountant when we started our company. I don't think we had $5,000 in it, but we went to him, and he became our advisor and consultant as we went along. He would say to me, "Get involved in politics," he said. "They can make you or break you. You better start paying attention to what they're doing over there." One day he says, "We got universities on the other side of the state. We got just as good at kids, and they deserve a university here. Let's have a university." Said, "Holy smokes, how are you going to do a university? We just, Michigan State, they run it here. They've been doing it forever. Those are our universities." "No," he says, "we can have our own university." "Well, it's 25,000 kids over there now, Tom. 25,000. All because Seidman says we ought to have a university here. And they got a dozen people with them, and they bought a farm and
The rest is history.
and built a university. And it was all done because I'd say a dozen, wasn't it, Dave? You say? A dozen people got together, primarily,
Yep.
and started putting the first money up. I think they told me I had to have $1 million or something over there in Lansing, and so they went out and did that. But you've got people like that in your town. You got to smoke them out and get them out.
Smoke them out.
There are people who need to be loved and appreciated, and they got a lot of money, but they're lonely as can be. That's true. They are not in the flow. They're not in the community. They don't go to church. They're just kind of in themselves. And you got to let them know there's a big world out there they can really have fun in and be a part of. My life is so rich with all the friends I have, but it's all because you're involved. Maybe because I give money. But it didn't start because I gave money, because I didn't have money. We started out, couple poor kids, and built a business. We started it with $50, and today it's a worldwide enterprise. But so we know what it's like to be just a citizen of a community. And we know what it was like to be asked to be on a hospital board, for example, or to be on a symphony board, or to be asked to help raise money for some cause. That was important to us. And it wasn't that we gave the money, it was that we were asked to be a player. And those of you who want to make your town better and are dedicated to it, then go, as I say about asking money for people, go hit them up. You know, if they say no, that's their problem, that's not yours. It's your challenge to ask, and it's their problem to say yes or no. But don't make that your problem so that you're afraid to ask them. They're just plain human beings, and sometimes you might be the best friend they have because you're the only person who's come over to see them in a long time. Just don't kid yourself. They're there. You got to find them.
Good advice. Now, although I'm sure some of you are sitting there thinking, they can't possibly fund everything in this community, which is true. And so I'm going to ask you, Kate, there are more worthy projects and there's more worthy organizations than there are resources to support all of them. And maybe, David, I'll start with you on this question because you do have family members on your foundation board. How do you handle those inherent conflicts, or how do you set priorities?
Well, we've developed over the past 23 years our focus areas, like any reasonably mature foundation. So there's 5 of them. They're pretty reasonably broad, and we are a private family foundation. However, we look a little bit, maybe more than a little bit, like a community foundation. Most of our grant making is in western Michigan, and most of that is in metropolitan Grand Rapids or central West Michigan. So we have a well-documented policies and focus areas, as we do in our investment policies as well. But we actually try to work through whatever, I wouldn't call them conflicts. They may be different assessments of your priorities, but the 5 focus areas were developed around the fact that while environment may be my brother's #1 priority, it may be someone else's 5th priority, and culture may be somebody else's #1 priority, but it's somebody else's #3. So you kind of negotiate through your focus areas, and Milt Rohr, our great president, is here. He could probably have some great cocktail talk about this at 5:30 this evening, but we've actually worked it out pretty well, and we're now engaging the next 3rd generation involved, and about to probably start to transition to the 3rd generation over the next 3 to 5 years. So I think we've had our own internal, spats. Every family has them. Get over it. Welcome to the world of families. So we worked through it, and we're better for it. And I think it's allowed us to come to the table and make most of our grant making is pretty much by consensus, by just collegiality, and recognizing that if it's really important to someone, you should help try to make it happen in a reasonable way, because we all have our passions and our priorities, and we try to accommodate those within the board meetings.
Kate, could you respond wearing your Steelcase hat? You've got different major shareholders on that board.
Right. Well, for my family foundation, my own family foundation, I'm a foundation of 1. So that makes for less arguments. But Dottie's right. And I've had an opportunity to be involved as a staff person and as a board member of Steelcase's foundation, and it's a unique foundation because it's been around for over 50 years. It was a part of a family-owned corporation that is now public, and it's a completely different animal than it was, and now I'm the chair of the board and not the staff anymore, which is very different. We don't all think alike. We have become much more focused in our old age, and that, I think, is to not only help our staff, but also to help us to navigate through all of the different requests that we get. We have the needs of the corporation, although we really try and keep that separate. We have the needs of family shareholders, and then we have the needs of the broader shareholder community. And we have the needs of our hometown. And this is where Steelcase was founded. We're about to celebrate 100 years of being alive and in this community, and the company has changed, and the landscape has changed. But I think that all of the trustees are very focused on doing what's right for the community, having a focus here in West Michigan, and giving back to the people that made us a great company. And if we keep those kinds of things in mind, it makes it easier. And it helps us all to navigate through some of those disagreements that we might have.
Well said. Well, now it's your turn. I know you have some burning questions. And if you would, address them to a certain person or to the whole gang. Any volunteers to start off?
There's one of my trustees right now.
Oh. It would help if you would say your name and who you're associated with.
Yes, Kate knows you can always count on me for talking. Elizabeth Likens, I am a trustee on the Steelcase Foundation, also live and raised in Grand Rapids as well, very committed, and thank you to all of you for all you do. You have paved the way for the next generation, undoubtedly. The concern I have, and I'm very involved in the philanthropic community as well, again, paved the way by those who came before me and the culture that was ingrained in all of us. I am very worried about these amazing buildings you all have helped to build. I'm looking at the next generation that's not going to have the level of wealth. It's just not going to be concentrated in a few hands where great decisions can be made, I think, very efficiently. And I'm worried so we're not going to have that sort of small core group that can come together. So that's one problem. And then we also just, the wealth itself. We're in a different economy now. We're going to have to be, I think, much broader in our fundraising, but I'm very worried. We have an opera, we have a ballet, we have a civic center, we've got a museum, we've got an opera. We've got all these great buildings. How are we going to sustain these moving forward, and do you all have a vision for that? Thank you.
Rich, do you want to take that one on?
We never had them before. We'll find them again. Those are the same worries we had the first day we opened our door in the business. Say, well, I better not build this building because maybe it won't hold up. You got to work at these stuff as if it's going to be here forever, and we're going to maintain it and become a greater city. We're not going to limit our growth. We're going to continue to do things that bring business to this town, brings people who want to do things because it's a going town, make it attractive to young people so that they want to come here, and it's a lively town, so you got to appeal to them. You got to make sure you got good education, which makes people want to stay here. We've got great medical facilities. We got a great symphony. All of these things we didn't have when we started. We have them now. And that attracts more people, and people who have greater interest in the arts and in medicine. And you look at the kind of people we're attracting, not only in the arts who play in our orchestras, but look at the people we're bringing to town with our research centers, with our medical system today, with our educational programs going on. The quality of people coming into this town is a long way from those Dutch farmers we used to have. You got to start with great confidence. And we have these buildings. The problem is they're probably going to be too small. We built DeVos Hall, and it was and is inadequate today. So get over it.
I guess I have a couple of comments in relation to that, and it has to do, I'm concerned too about that, Elizabeth, and I think what it's going to take is more people to spread it around, to give less money, but to support. And I also think it's the responsibility of the foundations to ask the questions of nonprofit organizations that want to put up monolithic buildings or not even monolithic, XYZ new charity, to really ask the tough questions of how are you going to sustain yourself? And if you don't get the right answer, you don't give them the money. And then on the other side, it's the responsibility of the nonprofits not to just build it because somebody has the money to do it.
Amen.
And to be able to be responsible enough to say, how am I going to keep this alive in 10 years? So I think there's responsibility on everybody's part to address that concern.
I'm wrong and Katie's right.
Well, I didn't say you were wrong.
No, I don't accuse you of that, but you bring the other dimension to it. That's very important. Thank you for that.
I would also add, while you're teaching your entrepreneurs and starting the businesses, whatever generation it is, please have a component on philanthropy, learning to give, the values, the ethics, the how-tos. I bet all of you can describe the first time you started giving resources, whatever age you were, but we need more people as part of this choir.
It's amazing the number of people and companies, whatever size, who've just not been exposed to a disciplined corporate giving program or a personal program for philanthropy. And I think that's why we're here. And we're going to, while this is the inaugural session of this seminar, symposium, there'll be others to follow in other cities around the country every year or two. So part of what we're here is how to educate and enlighten those who need really big-time enlightenment. I mean, there's a lot of folks out there who are very successful, not that they're not willing, they just don't know how to do it because they've never been around people who do it. So as Rich said, we got to go talk to these people and get them engaged, expose them to something they're not familiar with, and trust me, it doesn't take long before it really feels pretty good.
Got to smoke them out, right?
That's right. But I would also add, while we talk about different economy, this is not necessarily the new normal. Part of what we do and why we do it is to keep the businesses here that are here, and when they need to build a plant, build it here, not in one of the other 49 states. And we want young people to come to go to school. We have 5 colleges in the urban center of the city. We've got the most $1 billion of capital in the last 5 years invested in medical facilities. These are private dollars. And most of the dollars that are invested, amazingly as it may seem, have been private dollars, which is a very unique, a very special aspect of what we do in this metropolitan area, whether it's for the hospitals, whether it's for the entertainment and convention business, whether it's for Grand Valley State University, which has played a huge role in the maturation of the Western Michigan area, the whole state for that matter. So I'm confident there'll be a new steel case sometime. There'll be a new Amway or something. There'll be new banks. There'll be a lot of new businesses. They will. That is the spirit of entrepreneurism that Rich typifies. Rich and Jay typify for all of America, if not the globe. You can do anything you put your mind to. Just get in the game. Don't ever give up. Charge ahead. Trust me. As they say, luck is 90% hard work. And so I am confident. I hear these questions, and I guess I'm optimistic enough to think that we will maintain this momentum because of sort of the culture of the place and the spirit of goodwill and respect for each other and a determination to make this place forever special. And we're committed to do that.
Further questions?
Let me just
Actually, I have a comment.
1 second.
No, you go right ahead.
My name is Patty Jean McCahill, and I'm a citizen of Grand Rapids, Michigan. And the comment I want to make is about buildings. And my nephew, at 14, was diagnosed with advanced brain cancer. And our family contemplated taking him to University of Pittsburgh because they had the best pediatric neurosurgeon. But it's because we had Helen DeVos, the hospital, that we were able to find an unbelievable pediatric neurosurgeon. And the new hospital, for those of you who can go to it, it's not a hospital. It's a healing environment. It is, my nephew was the first person to have an operation there. And everything from the design details to The level of care is unparalleled. And I'm from Chicago, and we have Children's Memorial Hospital and Helen DeVos Hospital, and the standard of care here is absolutely phenomenal. And I'm very, very grateful to you and your wife.
Thank you. I know you got a lot of you want to ask things, but I want to get political only in the extent of taxes. They talk about inheritance taxes, and everybody thinks that's a great thing. In my opinion, inheritance taxes are a small town killer. Those of us who have made our money here and have companies here and give our money here, if the inheritance tax is like it used to be, we spent years trying to figure out how to get around it. We finally found some ways, but it was very costly. The point is, it ships money to Washington that should stay in Grand Rapids. That's what happens. And that's why small towns lose the Freys and the steel case companies that are successful here. When the founders and their estates pass on, then all that money, half of the value of that family goes to Washington. That millions or billions could and stay in this town, but it all gets shipped away. They spend it however they want to spend it, but we lose it. So just bear that in mind when you think about tax policy sometime. And so fortunately, we were able to transfer it off to our children when we had some bad years. We just gave the company to our kids to make sure that that would stay here, and that the company would stay here, and that income and wealth would stay here and be given here. But it's one of those things that can really take the capital base away from a community.
That's the unintended consequences of some policy and philosophy that doesn't work.
I understand the need for tax money and all that, but it's the only question of who's going to get it then. And I think we ought to be leaving some of that money here. It was created here by people who live here. And I think it ought to be able to be left here.
Tom.
This is a summit on family philanthropy. Well, one of the things we've been talking about, this is a summit on family philanthropy. Well, one of the things that we've been talking about time and again is private-public partnerships. Why is that so important?
Because we can't do it all. I mean, the bottom line is we can't do it all. All of the wealth in this room can't do it all. So we've got to do it together. That's my opinion.
I think the projects that I've been involved with lots of people, including Dick and Doug DeVos, they've all been successful because of public-private partnerships. I will say this, that they relied on the private sector leadership, but we could not have done what we've done without either the city, the county, or the state, and sometimes from Washington, in a different mix depending on which project you're talking about. These are capital projects, which we've been involved in, and they simply can't get done with most of them because of the scale. For example, the convention center, which we built, built, is a $220 million project, 1 million square feet. And there was a mix of funds that did a lot of things, but of the private sector, it was about $35 million. But there were, so you just, the city and the county owned the land. There was some underground stuff that the feds helped us with. The governor then, John Engler, we got a stipend from the state, which sort of, when it all put together, it was your classic public-private partnership. Same was true of the Grand Valley downtown campus. I chaired the campaign 15 years ago. Great experience, but it's the same depending on the scale.
I just need to note here for a moment, there's not only all these buildings, but there's community building going on. And I think of your son, Doug and Maria, who are now working with 4 different communities in Grand Rapids to help people, help children get educated, fed well, exposed to the arts, They're working in collaboration, certainly with the Grand Rapids Public Schools, the Kellogg Foundation, and hopefully other private philanthropies. So it's not only just the buildings going on in this area, it's the people structure. Janae, did I see you with a mic?
Thanks. Hi, I'm Janae Velasquez. I'm with the Herbert H. and Grace A. Dow Foundation in a small town called Midland, Michigan. I appreciate the comment on the inheritance tax and what it means for small communities. I would want to ask each one of the panelists, what's the one question that keeps you awake at night? And I'd also direct it to Dottie as well. What's the big question that keeps you awake at night? Thank you.
In general or in relationship to? I got a list. No.
Don't go there, Kate.
I think that for this community, it's how can we work together towards the same goal? And, it is true that we're blessed with a community that cares about people and one another, but it's still really difficult to get everybody to be working towards a goal, whether it be because XYZ nonprofit is concerned that if they don't get their share, then somebody else will, or whether it's that the philanthropy, the foundations aren't, on the same page. If there was anything that keeps me up at night, it would probably be how can we all work together towards the same goal.
Well, I think they fall in different categories. Certainly, you hope that your children will adopt or sort of get a sense for what your life has been about, and that they will, first of all, be principled, honest, hardworking, diligent, politically active, socially active contributors to society, and they'll outperform their parents, and hopefully come back here at some point in their life if they can find the challenge and continue on the tradition, at least for our family, and I'm sure others feel the same. But I convinced in my mind, and I think others would agree, that the future for this city has never been brighter because of all the factors we've talked about. It doesn't keep me up. The thing that keeps me up awake, that I'm concerned about, is will we take advantage of all the opportunities we have to make this region the best possible region? We've got so much momentum, so much focus by those who have the wherewithal to make it happen, and those who don't necessarily have the wherewithal financially have leadership skills that some of the others don't have. So there's a role for all of us to play, and let us not miss the moment, because you don't get many chances like we've had in this place, and we've seized most of them. There may be one or two in the near term to be realized, and we should not miss that opportunity.
Rich, did you wake up last night?
Nothing keeps me awake. That's not true. But, in regard to this, we live, I do, with a sense of confidence. I have a God who loves me and watches over me. And so I just don't worry about most of those things that this lady's aware of and needs to be paid attention to. But I don't think in terms of what's going to go wrong. I think in terms of what's going to go right. That's just me. And fortunately there's a bunch of others around here who think the other way to keep me from getting in trouble. I guess that's what I have lawyers for. But I suppose if I thought about it long enough, I could think of something for you. But it's just not, I'm not built that way. God built each of us differently, and thank goodness, because I'm so blindsided by so many things. I stayed in my job too long. Fortunately, I got a new heart, and I got a heart transplant. But, I worried a little bit when I was waiting for a new heart whether I'd ever get one, because we were almost at the end of my old hearts are keeping going, so a matter of days or weeks, they said, before my heart would expire, and fortunately I got a new heart at that time. But that keeps you awake. But otherwise, when I came to this town, it wasn't, when I become aware of what this town was like, it wasn't much. downtown Grand Rapids was in a very decaying, sad sight. So, you couldn't make too many mistakes to help it. It was, the symphony was struggling along, the hospital was struggling along, and my business is building people up, build an army. It's all over the world, tens of millions of people who bought into this idea. It's old Carnegie stuff. It's old Norman Vincent Peale stuff. There's nothing magic or new about it. It's just that you start with faith in what people can do, and you're amazed what they do. And if you live in an atmosphere of what you can't do, then you'll begin to think of what you can't do. So you got to get some positive thinking going on in your community. My father was a positive thinker. David's father was. Kate's father were positive people. Kate's father came from some wealth. David's father, I don't know where David's father got his money, but he came from some wealth. Some of it came from us when we had our first business. But they came up from a little different background than I did. But their fathers were positive people with faith in this community. Faith that the town could go forward. We fought a war. We went through big depressions. We talk about what might go wrong. A lot of things can go wrong, but a lot of things did go wrong. When people say that to me, I say, well, in Amway, we've been through 4 depressions and 3 wars, and we're still going. Now, the people who want to think that a war is going to stop you, then they probably shouldn't go in business or something. But wars come and depressions come and times change, and always we kept finding better people. We have a big business in Japan, and I just sent them a little disc how they had friends all over the world, and our Amway people all over the world start giving. And I think by the time the company said, we'll match whatever you guys put up. And I think we gave $4 or $5 million to help in Japan. That's just a part of the camaraderie. When good people come together to assist each other and build, it becomes a force. And the Amway business is typical of a force that's come together, of people who care about each other, who have common interests, and who want to make something happen. And we got to make a force. You got to make a force in your community, and you will be the better for it. And you'll be the recipient of the benefit of it. And I know a lot of you have to raise money, and it's tough going. It's tough going to build a business too. But you just keep plugging away, and every once in a while you find a live one. And the live one will get you to another live one. And it's a process of digging them out sometime. But once you dig them out, they are enriched more than by what you've taken from them. Our joy of watching the Helen DeVos Children's Hospital happen is greater than any benefit you receive from it. I hope not, maybe, but it was so joyful to do it. To hear the symphony play and know that you had a big hand in keeping it going and running gives me greater joy than it does most of the people who are there. Because I know we played a little different role in it. All of these things. And there are people in your town who need that satisfaction and that joy. And once that starts, it feeds on itself. So I wish you the best in your communities as you work at it. It's not a simple, it's not an easy, it's not a quick process. David over here, along with others, has taken the lead on keeping this town going. We built that hotel one day, and then our son, who was running the company, said, we got to keep something going downtown, so we built a big condominium over here. Because he said, we got to keep it going, we got to keep it going. And then we built the arena, and David got into all of those things, and they formed a group called Grand Action, and they're looking at projects to, what do we do next? To keep it going, to keep progress going. And mostly, not just in getting private companies to work here or come here, but in building public and private things, the community things. Other people around here bring businesses to town and salute people, but you know, who wants to come to a town that's got a bad attitude? You know, you don't think that's important, but if I'm going to look for a town that want to do businesses, I want to go into one where the people are happy and helping each other and making something happen. You know, I'm you wouldn't believe it. I'm not a union guy. I believe in the value of the individual, of what they can accomplish. And the other attitude is one of, well, you're dumb and stupid, and I got to take care of you, and you got to pay me for it. I think that's defeating, and it creates a community culture of the helplessness of the individual. Now, you may not agree with that, and it's a big world, and you do what you like. You may say they're helpless, we got to help them, and that may be true too. But at some point, you got to have a town that has people who stand up for things and want to make it a better place, and know that they are able. And I hope you can build a community of people who feel that they are able. It isn't David or Kate or myself or Dottie here that makes this town better. We just happen to be, God placed us here for this little bit of time. I know one thing, my kids are a lot better and brighter and work harder than I ever did. They're taking the business to heights I never imagined. They're smarter. They know more. What a pace, you know. You watch your young next generations coming on in that atmosphere. They grew up in an atmosphere. We need a good atmosphere. So I wish you well as you, in your business, in your fundraising efforts, you will create in your little, big, whatever thing you're doing, an atmosphere. But we can do this thing. We can make a better thing. We'll get this job done. David was just saying on the Seidman building, we're just about done. Huh? David and my son are helping raise the money, and they had to raise, what, 30 million or something. And, well, we're within the last million. Wow. That's a victory. Those are things to celebrate. Celebrate. When I got my new heart, they gave you a lot of drugs for rejection, and I was having a bad nightmare, and I had some terrible ones. And one night I had one, I saw myself walking up on a stage to give a speech, and I had a blank piece of paper. And the words that suddenly popped on the paper were celebrate. Celebrate. I've been celebrating ever since. That's 14 years ago. But celebrate.
Celebration.
Yeah.
Time for one more question.
Down here.
Oh, what keeps me awake at night? Well, last night it was
Art.
how I introduced these three fantastic people.
There's a question?
Okay, Doug, one last question.
We almost don't need another question after that. That was terrific. And I want to address this to David, a thank you and then a question. Because I want to thank you for, I know that you all have made investments in buildings, but I know that you all espouse the fact that it's not so much the buildings as it is the people inside them doing the work. Right. So I want to thank you for making the investment in the endowed chair for family philanthropy, and the first endowed chair in that. It's a big investment, so thank you. It was a pleasure serving on its advisory board with Dottie and with Paul Bond in the back of the room and many others.
Well, let me just interject. We are thrilled with Michael Moody, the selection.
Yes.
And it was a national search. There's a few bumps along the way, I think. I was sort of tangentially, but we are thrilled with Michael. We welcome him to Grand Valley and to this great city, and we're looking forward to having his wife join him soon, I think, who's a sort of a rock star in her own right. So it's a dynamite couple. We're fortunate to have them.
Terrific. So the question is, maybe we don't have time for it, but my question is, we've talked about a lot of partnerships here and with leaders and so on, but we also know that we need partnerships with those that we're hoping to serve. So with all of the issues facing Grand Rapids in terms of early childhood disparities, food issues, K through 12 education, how do you ensure that the voice of the residents and some of the folks who face those challenges every day are infused in this process and they get a say in this as well?
Well, I will say, Kate sort of alluded to some of this on the educational social issues, but I think in the issues that I've been involved with, we have a very extensive and very well-disciplined effort to reach out to all segments of the community. And in fact, we have a committee of 250 to try to gather all the various ethnic groups, and so it's a very well-disciplined project from start to finish. And so it's not just a few people in the room cooking up stuff, to try to pitch to people. It takes time, it takes money, and in fact, in the projects that we've been involved in, we've typically between $750,000 of sort of quiet venture capital philanthropy, to be honest, from very generous donors in this region who said, I know what you want to do, we think it's a great idea, I will donate $1 million or whatever the number is to let you take this concept or this idea to the point where you can tell us how to do it. And part of that $1 million, just to use a simple number, big number but simple number, is to try to reach out to the community to ascertain the level of support, the level of enthusiasm, the need. Is it a priority? How high a priority? So that when we get to the sort of the starting line, we know that we have a project that has broad and deep support. It's a high need, a high priority, and the success of the project from both a fundraising as well as a public-private partnership aspect has a very close to 100% chance of being achieved. So you have to do it. Stuff that gets cooked up in somebody's kitchen won't go. It has to have broad support of the philanthropic community and the foundation community. And one thing that I think is really important for this region, and I'm sure for yours, is that the foundations need to network. They need to sort of find their overlapping, their concentric areas of focus and support those things in a very sort of direct and visible way. The people need to know where the foundations are, what role they're going to play, and when they have these overlapping areas of interest, get on board early and set an example early on in the partnership. Sorry for such a lengthy answer. Thank you for the question.
May I suggest that our speakers will be here for a little bit as we follow, but you were invited into the living room of a few fabulous Greater Grand Rapids donors, and I hope you've enjoyed this candid and creative conversation, and our thanks go to Kate and David and Rich. Please join me.
We're going to stay.
Thank you, everybody.